What's up, everyone? Brand new information has been revealed to us from an interview on the Allcast podcast. And all credits to them for doing this amazing interview with the Stunlock Studios developers, Peter and Martin. They did a great job. I highly recommend, honestly, just watching the full interview. I'm sure they have it up on the YouTube channel. If not, you can go to Asmongold's VODs and watch it because it was really, really good. It had a lot of information, but there were some key takeaways that I wanted to share that I thought was really interesting in terms of PvE Invasions and post game content they're adding with Dracula and new weapons that they teased and things they're going to do for abilities. So I thought it was really interesting. So what we're going to do is I pulled some clips from the podcast of the developers talking about it. I'll show the clip that they talked about, and then I'm going to kind of analyze and kind of speak briefly about what it can mean, and then just kind of walk through the biggest takeaways from this interview and some of the awesome content that's coming up for V Rising. So if you enjoy this content, obviously be sure to like and subscribe and everything like that. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Guys looking into more weapon abilities?
Yes. Short answer.
All right. Take it, Chad. There we go. You got your answer, Chad.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's good. Are you guys gonna add in like a two-handed greatsword?
There's already a two-handed greatsword on
What
its
the
way.
hell?
On its way.
Oh, I was about to say. I thought,
But yeah, well, the long answer I would say is we're definitely going to add abilities, weapons, and spells. But we also are looking into how can we add another axis so that you can actually maybe modify the current spells, modify the weapons as well. So itemization is something that we haven't actually spent too much time on so far, and something that we want to look into further to see to push it not only more content, but maybe add a layer of depth to the current items spells as well.
So I wanted to start off with the most important news, probably the most impactful for those who are interested in PvP, and that's this whole idea of new weapons, abilities, spells, as well as potential ways they're adding, as they called, another axis or axis to the whole kind of builds system with kind of variations and modifying spells, weapons, and abilities. So first things first, they have confirmed the Great Sword is coming to the game. This is a two-handed sword, so not your normal sword, but a big two-handed sword for all you Berserk fans. That's super exciting. I'm glad to hear that they said that it's on its way. So there's already going to be another weapon potentially in the near future. I think realistically probably sometime in the summer, sometime fall will be when it comes out. But it's great to hear that they are already working on them and have one getting ready to be shipped out, as well as they have acknowledged that they're going to be adding more weapon abilities, or maybe even just changing or reworking the weapon abilities. Whether that means that the weapons are not going to have 3 abilities, or that just means that they're going to add a lot more weapons, so there's no more weapon abilities because there's more weapons. We're not sure yet. They weren't really clear on that, but still super exciting to hear that they're adding that. In terms of spells, we knew more spells were going to be added because they already talked about how they're going to add more V-Blood units, and obviously more spells will come from that. And some trees of spells have less actual spells available than others, like Frost only has 4 abilities, while other trees have 5. So we already knew that more abilities were going to be coming out, more spells were going to be coming out, and probably more ultimates. So super excited about that. Love to hear it. The more interesting thing that they kind of teased and they said they were kind of exploring, so I won't expect this anytime soon, was ways to modify specific spells or abilities. Now this may be a new type of gear, maybe we already have a jewelry piece, maybe that just becomes an amulet, and then you get rings that the rings will make maybe a cooldown difference, or maybe it'll be Chaos Volley. Instead of shooting 2, it just shoots 1. That each one does 220% damage, whatever it is now. Instead it does a little bit more, a little bit less, but it has 1 shot instead. Or maybe a shield, a barrier will now do front and back, but it'll last half the time. There's stuff like that I think would be really interesting. I'm not sure if that's the route they're going, or if it's more gonna be certain spells and abilities will have cooldown reduction or damage buffs. I'm not sure which way they're really going, or if it's gonna be both. But I really like the idea. Someone who has been making a lot of builds and really exploring various build opportunities and options in the game. The idea of adding these modifiers and ways to change certain abilities from weapons and spells, that just sounds like a dream come true. So I really hope they actually dive in on this and really flesh out a system with that, with the new weapons, because that would just really make PvP and just games and progression and just everything a lot more interesting, a lot more replayable, and a lot more diverse. So I really enjoyed that idea. I hope they go through with it. And yeah, great sword here soon, and super exciting news all around for people like us who love PvP and different abilities and just everything. So super stoked to be here about all that.
Castle, as to add on that, like the castle is so central to it. So that the floor thing is one thing, but we're also like seeing how we can get the castle to be more central on, especially on PvE as well. As right now, it's primarily a target when you're playing PvP where you can raid other players. But currently, there's like no PvE threat. There's nothing that can like invade your castle, and
Yeah.
that's also like playing into those survival aspects of actually like having factions that can attack your castle that you have to fend it off. And with that, like adding content such as like expanding on the servants for the combat, maybe traps and stuff that you want to encompass in your castle when they breach your walls. We always like had this ambitions with the castle to stay true to this elegant, beautiful, like Gothic castle. So traps and stuff like that is something we have been a bit cautious about, as we don't want it to turn into like a bunker, basically.
Now, this idea is actually something I talked about in my video for like must add content to V Rising. I'm really glad that between that and obviously plenty of other people kind of talking about it and the developer's own intuition, that's being looked into. I know from playing like some survival games like Valheim, having those like, NPC, PvE invasions, we have to defend your home is really exciting. It adds a nice dynamic. And I talked a lot in that video before about how like in V Rising, you interact with the world. Like you go and you seek people out, you go and find the patrols, and sometimes they find you, but no, you're the one who's going and choosing to interact. You could just sit in your base and nothing would ever happen if you so choose. And so actually having this world where you got vampire hunters and you got, the militia and the paladins and all this, even undead, like you should have a target. And while like raids are one thing, like actually having PvE raids would add just such a fun dynamic. I don't know how it'll work out for like PvP servers. Like the last thing I would want to see happen is that people just sit on siege golems until they see a castle is being PvE rated, and then they just like drop a siege golem on top of it and you have to fight off both. I think that would be, and maybe that would just be fun. Like maybe that would just be fun content because the raiders have to also fight off the NPC attackers. But who knows? But either way, I'm really excited to see that they're like looking into ways to have the world also go after you, because vampire hunters, they should hunt you down. That's the whole job. That's the whole purpose of their immersion, is to hunt you down, not just patrol on roads here and there, right? So I like the idea. The paladins in the story of the game, hunted down and warred against the vampires. Why are they just sitting in Silverlight? They should be going after us, right? So I really enjoyed that idea. I think that's be interesting, and I like the fact that they also talked about traps. That's another thing that we talked about, because right now you have like kind of like tweaking game mechanics to kind of make them traps, like trapping werewolves in your place, or like using graves to like spawn a bunch of like skeletons or priests or whatnot to be able to defend your place. So stuff like that right now acts as traps, but I like the idea that they're trying to add more dynamic ways to add traps. I just hope that if they do add more traps, and they said they don't want to make it a bunker, but if they do add it, they need to add more agency for those attacking, because right now it's already defense favored during a raid if you have a decent castle setup. So I'd love to make sure that they're going to add more dynamics to defend your castle with like traps, that they add more ways to actually attack with it.
As like something that we're looking for now is what will the end game look like, right?
Yeah.
What's the end game of V Rising? And thematically or in our ambition will be to bring back Dracula. Like that's one of the things.
Oh my god.
So what is Dracula? What is his entity? What is his role within in our universe? I think you can see like remnants of his castle today in like the Dunley farmlands, and that's always been like a vision where we early on like, what is his role? Will you be able to challenge him? Will you be able to become Dracula in the end game? Will you be sitting on the throne of darkness? Like we have these Game of Thrones vibes going on, like and ideas for the different clans fighting for them, but also the different factions, like the undead faction, the militia, maybe the church, like this politics and things that goes on. That was something we're really intrigued about early on in the development, and still are. So I guess that's something that you will definitely see us working on, will be our version, our vision of like Dracula returning to our world, and as some sort of big event. And there will definitely be an endgame scenarios there that would add a lot of new cool content.
So it's confirmed Dracula's coming back. This has been speculated and teased a lot in the past, and we all know now, or if you don't know, it's okay, but the big kind of crater area in the middle of Dunley that you can fly over and see the ruins that used to be Dracula's castle. And so we kind of knew for a while that, no, obviously in a vampire game, Dracula is going to come back. He's in the lore already. It would make sense. And so it's really cool that they're going to try and send in a lot of like post-game content around this dynamic of maybe events based around his return. Maybe it's a situation where like a certain day passes in the game and that's when Dracula returns, and that changes the dynamic of a server you want to play on until the day 300, and that's when Dracula comes back and a bunch of new post-game content comes out. And they also tease like a politics system with it, so maybe there's something like getting Dracula's favor that gives you certain loot or items or powers, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a whole cool dynamic system that could also eventually lead into a new boss with obviously Dracula could be the final boss of the game, which would be really an amazing kind of epic finale of the story of a vampire defeating Dracula himself. So I think it's really exciting that they're looking to add this type of post-game content and incorporating like such a legendary figure in all of vampire mythology. So I think this is really interesting to see, and I'm excited to honestly see how it turns out.
So you can make a larger base that just has like 3 or 4 floors.
Yeah, I think that's we're really intrigued about that idea, and we have been testing with it internally, and that would also solve some of the like level design issues with the space that is required right now. So
yeah,
we're definitely as we like, and it also plays into the vampire theme, like this big gothic big castle, and we always want to like emphasize on the vampiric feel of the game. So it's definitely something we are intrigued about. But as Martin were saying, it's the technical difficulties of a 2D/3D game that we will need to figure out, and we hope that we will be able to do so.
Now, this has been a very highly asked addition to the game. I've seen a lot on the Discord, on the forums, on my own YouTube comments and everything. So it's no surprise that the developers have heard this. I'm really reassured by them that they're actually looking into it, because this will solve a lot of issues and really just kind of help create a better feel to the castle. Being able to have different stories and levels to your castle, and then maybe a basement, stuff like that would just add a lot of depth to it. And then it'll also solve a lot of issues, especially on very populated servers where people start claiming every little corner of the map, because you have to only expand outwards. You can't expand vertically, so you have to go like kind of wide and have depth there. So I think it's really interesting. I think especially on populated servers like your Valhalla Rising servers that get over 1,000 people that touch those servers or whatnot, like those, they get crowded. Even my own server, after a few days, it's always super crowded, and people like might have trouble like finding spots that actually build on and like develop. So this is like a well realized kind of issue. And so I'm glad that they're like noticing it and trying to find solutions to it. And I'm really interested to kind of have that also immersion in terms of being able to just have this multi-storied castle that just kind of expands across and goes vertically high, and just like what you could do with that in terms of servant locations and castle setups, and just a greater immersion feeling as well. So I'm super excited about this kind of prospect, and hopefully we'll see it actually implemented here soon.
And for the theme is something we will when we're like expanding the world as well with the aesthetics and the units. We're like looking at a lot of these more horrors, more demons, more. We're talking a lot about like this Frankenstein inspired village or city as well. So we're like, what can we take from, what can we be inspired from and add all this kind of really cool horror themed units into the game as well.
Now, for you hardcore PvPers, this may not be the most like interesting thing to you, but I actually thought it was really cool, and I like the idea that they're trying to add more, diverse areas, more, types of enemies, more kind of investing in the horror side of the vampire theme, having more undead and different like that Frankenstein themed area would be really cool. So I just think that adds like a lot of possibilities in terms of different summons you could have, different things you interact with, different boss types, that just really would add a lot more depth to the game. So that's just a small thing I wanted to share as well that I thought was super interesting, and yeah, that's why I shared it. And yeah, those are the most important things that I think were revealed from the interview. Again, please go watch all of it. It was a great interview. Big shout out to Allcraft for doing such a good job, and shout out again to the developers for hopping in and chatting about their game. And with that, I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.